Hi there from Bug Eye Guy. This is Thor. Thor is ready to go, and this is a car we're very proud of because it came to us, and since it's been here, it's about 150 improvements, and everything from the simple and subtle to the complicated, it's all been changed on this car. And I just want to give you a quick tour of some of those things. Like, for example, this is a twin tip exhaust system, so it got a brand new exhaust and it sounds great. And these bumpers were not straight, so now they're lined up. Very simple detail, but there's a combination of all these things. Even this license plate mount, it's non-stock. Normally you'd have the license plate light mount up here, and this is fine. A lot of people do it this way. It's two lights, but this was bent, and we put the plate on and it looked bent, and we already talked in a prior video about how this car has been hit. So just reshaping this bracket so that this is straight. These are the things that go into a project like that, like this one for us. And this car is completely transformed as a result of being here. You look at this beautiful Stay Fast canvas top, like on a Mercedes or a Porsche, super high-end, beautiful color scheme. But to just throw a top on one of these cars is obviously not going to give you a spectacular car. You know, when we were all in our 20s, we could get by with a lot of this stuff when it wasn't right. But now when you're over 50 and you have a Tesla that goes 0 to 100 in 10 seconds or whatever it is, your fun car in the third garage needs to hold its own. And I think that's what's really interesting to me about now we've done about 400 of these cars, the ones that we've sold, the ones that we've fixed for people. And all 400 of them are this amazing array of these little subtle and not so subtle details. And that's how you get to 150 improvements. It came to us with no trunk badge, and the client really wanted that installed. So we did that. And it came to us with these wheels, as a matter of fact. And they're beautifully coated by the seller who sold this online. And they're actually from 2015, which they're only 7 years old. That's, a lot of people will tell you that's when they're expired. But many of these classic cars, I mean, right here we have one that's probably 25 years old, and that's really outdated. But the thing about this tire that I noticed when I drove the car, and from driving so many of them, it's a rock hard tire. It is finished, it's done. It's no good. You don't get any adhesion with the asphalt, you don't get good braking, you don't get good handling. But most importantly on these cars is you don't get good ride quality. This is a brand new 165 tire that we put on. And the ride couldn't be more different with this versus this. And that's sort of at the foundation of all the things that we improve. And these wheels are often bent. The nice looking wheel online in the pictures, but when you can't get it balanced well, or you notice driving down at 65 that the steering wheel has some pulsing, that's when a wheel like this makes a difference. And then these emblems on the wheels make it look good. But it's this sort of holistic view of how to build a wonderful sports car is how we end up with this. And what was online in the classified ads before the client bought it, it may have looked the same, but it pretty much bore no resemblance to what this is right now. If you look at this, for example, one of the greatest things about all of these Sprites, and, there's 20 of them in the building now, is this. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but you move this wheel, a 1/16 of an inch, and the front wheel is moving a 1/16 of an inch. And many of the other classic British cars are much looser. This steering design is so tight and precise. It's part of the experience of wearing your Bug Eye. And when there's slop in the steering, it really kind of ruins the experience in my book. And what had happened here was this spline was not properly installed. Again, who knows how many owners prior, but the aluminum hub that holds the steering wheel was actually stripped. And it was held on and it was bolted on, but there was play. You see it in one of our prior videos. Now we have a new hub. We have a billet horn push here that tends to work reliably. Thankfully it worked. And it looks much better. So again, it's a very complicated thing, getting the wheel tight, a simple aesthetic of a nicer horn push, and then the functionality of the actual horn. Another thing that blew my mind on this one is something I haven't seen before. We have this wonderful top, as I mentioned, but remember, you have to have the bar to hold the top to the windshield. Otherwise, what happens is when you get to speed, it balloons up like this. And I know because my own car, I never had this bar. We have these bars in our catalog. A lot of people are missing them, but it goes in this pouch and it has to lap over into this. So we dutifully ordered this top for the client per his request, and now we stock these because it's such a nice product. But lo and behold, much to our surprise, this actual channel was closed on this car. And that was really a bad moment, because how do you fix that? The windshield actually closed this gap. Let's say there's 3/8 of an inch uniform gap to accommodate this bar, but it wasn't here on this car. And why is that? Because whoever installed this windshield, God knows how many years ago, didn't have it properly anchored, and this gap was just gone. So the only way we could fix that, you couldn't push the windshield back, because the gasket, the glazing rubber, loses its suppleness and becomes rigid. And in fact, it locks the windshield exactly where you don't want it to be. So bad news for the client, but we had to take out the glass, put in new glazing rubber. And of course, while you're at it, if there are any stone chips, well, that's the time to put in new glass. So that's how you get to 150 items, is that you can only go so far in the chain before something else gets in your way. And that's really kind of the summary of what we're doing here pretty much each and every day with all of these projects, is we're trying to build a sculpture and make it just as wonderful as it can be. And if the budget is available, there are these things that we can keep continuing to improve and to keep the cars, alive and well for generations to come. We have these new wonderful lights, and I'll open the hood and we'll show you some more. Let's go under the hood on this bug eye. So first of all, here's the aluminum radiator with the correct cap. A lot of the aftermarket radiators have a 15-pound modern style cap. This is a 7-pound cap, which is important because you don't want to overstress. This system was originally designed for 5 to 7 pounds, so we're happy that we have that. But these move heat so much more effectively. But again, this is just one of so many of the things these 150 things that went into this car. Much better air filters, new master cylinder, new thermostat, a better thermostat gasket, a lot of new water hoses, new heater hose, new heater valve. Remember, this is how you turn the heat on and off on these. So all of these things coming together to finish the product, and lo and behold, much to our surprise, while backing the car out of the garage, almost finished with the whole job, it got jammed into 2 gears at once. Now, how is that possible? Well, we took out the transmission. It turns out that the detents were installed incorrectly by the last one of the rebuilders previously. They put the detent balls in backwards, which allowed you to engage 2 gears simultaneously. Thankfully, that happened here in Connecticut in our shop and didn't go all the way to Minnesota, at which time it would have been undrivable. It was for us, but we pulled out the engine, we changed the transmission. So, you have the best laid plans, 150 things on your build sheet to sort out this car and make it wonderful. And oops, along the way, 90% through the project, you end up needing a whole new transmission. What can you do? This is part of life in 2022 with a 60-something-year-old car. These are the issues that we inherit, that everyone inherits when you own one of these cars. All we can do is try to optimize everything and to be available to address these problems. Fortunately, it didn't set us back for very long because we had another rebuilt gearbox in our building. Anyway, other things that we had to do when we took the engine out, these are ether filled. You may not know that. The temperature probe here is in the head. The ether heats up and runs all the way down this tube through the firewall up here, and it moves the mechanical needle on the temperature gauge. And when you
inevitably these fail. When you remove them, they don't have the proper shock cord. This allows everything to wiggle without fracturing this ether tube. And so unfortunately on this particular car, the gauge was done and it no longer works, so we had to put in a new temperature gauge. We needed a new starter solenoid. We needed, I talked about this earlier, if you can see, here's the oil pressure gauge feed. That's the mechanical artery that feeds oil right to the gauge behind the dash. And that needed to be replaced so that it was a nice fresh hose. We put in a new battery and a new battery hold down. A lot of these cars, and if you're watching and you have a Sprite or a Midget, you want to make absolutely certain this battery is not movable. This is a brand new battery, a high output battery, and also a proper hold down so that when you go out and go racing around turns, the battery doesn't move, because you have a hot lead right here and you have an unsheathed metal cable for your starter solenoid, if you can see that down here. And when these two things collide, you end up with sparks. And that's the only time we've ever had a bug-eye engine fire, was when that happened, believe it or not, with a car that I took off the truck and made one turn. It traveled across the country with a loose battery, but the guy didn't make any high performance turns, but I did, and moved the battery and it started to smolder, and that was really a close call. But anyway, battery hold down is really essential. It's amazing to me that car would have just caught on fire on the truck, but it didn't, and it made it here. And it's another testimonial about this concept of sorting these cars out. There's just always more sorting to do. This one got a new air snorkel here. The one that came in the car was dented. We have an alternator generator here that's higher output, better bearings. We sell these in our catalog, but it's a way to get a nice alternator and not alter the look under the hood. And then it has a dummy regulator that has a fuse in it, which instead of it being a regulator that also is a risk, a failure risk, now it has a fuse, so it's protecting you instead of making your car more vulnerable. But what I really wanted to share in this video for everyone, if you have a tachometer issue, this was all messed up on this car, but we fixed it all. This is important to know something about. The generator is spinning this little gearbox that reduces the RPMs of the cable. The cable is spinning, and it spins, it winds its way behind the heater box in front of the battery, and then through the firewall directly here under this ground lead and to the tachometer, which is right back there. And if anything causes any friction or issue, it will either not work or make noise or jump a lot. And the noise is the issue in this case. Again, we were almost done, everything was working, but we made it all work, but then the noise became an issue. And we'll insert a little video right here so that you can hear that noise. So in that video, that's me running the car and hearing that ticking noise at idle. And what's happening, I'll grab a cable and bring it up here. This is the end that's screwed into that tach drive. And all that's happening is this, it's pretty amazing that can even twirl with this cable coiled up. Here's the other end at the instrument. But you see it's obviously responding immediately. And what the issue in this particular case was that this inner cable was just the slightest bit too long. We shaved a little bit off, and what was happening was the extra compression of this knurled ring on a little too much inner cable was actually causing the cable, it just was not moving accurately or efficiently. There was too much material, and by relieving a little bit of material, it allowed a much smoother rotation of that inner cable. You often have to take these out and grease them and put them back in to make it smoother. And in fact, it's a good idea to grease this little gearbox. It comes apart pretty easily. But that's how we got rid of the ticking noise that you hear in the video.
So there you have it. Transformation. A bug-eye that was perfect, sold online, not so perfect. But you know, what's really interesting to me is that as these cars age, now we've been at this for 15 years, and even though it went by in a flash, I think 15 years ago, then there would be 75 things that we would need to do, not 150. The fleet is aging. The speed with which people are placing their classic cars online and listing them for sale is increasing. The quantity of online information available is increasing. The number of cars that are being pulled out and given a good paint job and then put for sale, it's all increasing because classic cars are growing in popularity, and the value of Sprites and all old cars, good classic cars, is increasing. But they got to work right. And a car like this that is small and short is very, very sensitive. And it's sensitive when it works, it's sensitive when it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, that sensitivity is really a problem. You want it, these cars are a dream when they run well. And you know, a lot of times when we unload them from the trailers, when they come here, whether I buy them or someone buys one and sends it here, I'm just shocked that people have lived with them in the shape that they're in, that people have just forgotten what's possible, that people have just tolerated these. They get into their fun car and it works and it gets them to the supermarket, but there's 30 things on their punch list and they just tolerate it. So our business is really about fixing that. And if you want us to take on your car, we're delighted to have the opportunity. It just takes some time and patience, and sometimes 150 items. And even the cars that we sell, they're never perfect. We will make them as perfect as we can for the new owners, but just because we're selling them, we're still subject to the same challenges. So we can't always fix everything. It depends on the client and the budget. But making them better is what we do every day. And I thank you all for watching here at Bug Eye Guy.